The women thought they'd found their best friend in their new neighbor. They had no idea they were actually confessing to their husband's worst nightmare. It all started with an innocent smile and freshly baked apple pie. Margaret Thompson moved into the colonial house at the end of Maple Street in suburban Connecticut during the first week of May, when the neighborhood wives were already planning their summer gardens. At 42, Margaret was everything the women of Maple Street aspired to be. Perfectly styled auburn hair that caught the sunlight just right, designer clothes that looked effortless, and a warm laugh that made everyone feel like her closest confidante. She drove a pearl-white BMW and always seemed to know exactly the right thing to say. Within her first week, Margaret had introduced herself to every household with homemade treats and compliments about their landscaping. She admired Sarah Wilson's rose bushes, praised Jennifer Clark's herb garden, and even found something nice to say about Linda Morrison's struggling tomato plants. "You ladies have such beautiful yards," Margaret said during an impromptu gathering on Sarah's front porch. "Back in California, I ran a very successful garden club. Would you be interested in starting one here? I'd love to share some techniques that might help." The women were delighted. Maple Street had always been friendly, but they'd never had an organized social activity that brought them together regularly. Margaret's enthusiasm was infectious, and her credentials impressive. She mentioned studying horticulture at UC Davis and working with high-end landscape designers in Marin County. The first official meeting was held in Margaret's beautifully appointed living room. She'd already decorated with fresh flowers from her rapidly blooming garden and served wine alongside delicate finger foods. The atmosphere was sophisticated yet welcoming, making each woman feel special and important. "I believe gardening is really about nurturing," Margaret said, her green eyes sparkling with warmth. "And what we nurture in our gardens often reflects what we're cultivating in our lives." The comment led to deeper conversations than any of them had expected. Sarah, whose marriage to her workaholic husband had grown distant, found herself sharing her loneliness. Jennifer confessed her suspicions about her husband's late nights at the office. Linda admitted her marriage had lost its spark years ago. Margaret listened with such genuine empathy, asking thoughtful questions and sharing her own experiences with relationships. She spoke about her divorce from a cheating husband in California, how she'd learned to value herself and demand better. The women felt understood in a way they hadn't experienced in years. "You deserve so much more than settling," Margaret would say, reaching across to squeeze a hand or offer an encouraging smile. "Life is too short to be unhappy." By the third meeting, the women were sharing secrets they'd never told anyone. Sarah revealed she'd been having fantasies about the handsome contractor working on her kitchen renovation. Jennifer admitted she'd been flirting with her personal trainer at the gym. Linda confessed to a brief emotional affair with a coworker that had ended months ago. Margaret created an atmosphere where these confessions felt safe, even empowering. She shared stories of her own past indiscretions, making the women feel less guilty about their wandering thoughts and desires. Wine flowed freely, and inhibitions lowered with each meeting. "We're all human," Margaret would say with her understanding smile. "Having desires doesn't make us bad people. It makes us alive." What the women didn't know was that Margaret was recording every conversation. Hidden microphones throughout her house captured every confession, every secret, every moment of vulnerability. She even encouraged the women to bring photos from their phones, ostensibly to share gardening ideas, while she quietly photographed any compromising images or messages. The first blackmail letter arrived at Jennifer's house on a Tuesday morning in July. Her husband Mark was traveling for business, so she was alone when she found the envelope, with no return address mixed in with the regular mail. Inside was a transcript of her conversations about her personal trainer, along with screenshots of flirtatious text messages she'd exchanged with him. The note was simple: "Your husband would be very interested in reading this. $5,000 in cash will ensure he never has to. Instructions to follow. Jennifer's hands shook as she read it again. How could anyone have gotten her private messages? Who would do something so cruel? Her mind immediately went to the garden club conversations, but she dismissed the thought. Margaret had become such a trusted friend. Similar letters arrived at Sarah's and Linda's houses over the next week. Sarah's contained evidence of her fantasies and her inappropriate behavior around the contractor. Linda's revealed details about her emotional affair, including love letters she thought she deleted. Each woman was instructed to leave cash in a different location: a hollow tree in the park, a loose brick in the old church wall, behind a specific gravestone in the cemetery. They were warned that any attempt to involve police would result in their secrets being sent to their husbands, children, and neighbors. The amounts started small, $5,000 here, $3,000 there, but Margaret quickly escalated her demands. She knew exactly how much each family could afford, having carefully studied their lifestyles, homes, and spending habits during her friendly visits. Sarah's husband David worked in finance and had recently received a substantial bonus. Margaret demanded $15,000 to keep Sarah's secrets safe. Jennifer's family had inherited money from her grandmother's estate, making them good for $12,000. Linda's husband owned a successful accounting firm, so her blackmail payments started at $10,000. The women began making excuses to their husbands for missing money. Sarah claimed she'd decided to renovate the guest bathroom. Jennifer said she was investing in a friend's startup business. Linda explained that she'd made a large donation to charity for tax purposes. As summer progressed, the financial strain became evident. The women who had once been excited about garden club meetings now attended reluctantly, trying to maintain normalcy while living in constant fear. They were trapped by their own secrets and the trust they'd placed in someone they thought was their friend. Margaret continued playing her role perfectly. She expressed concern when the women seemed stressed, offered shoulder to cry on when they complained about money troubles, and even suggested they might want to scale back the garden club meetings since everyone seemed so busy. "I hope I haven't been too demanding with our activities," she said with apparent sincerity. "I just want everyone to be happy and comfortable." The beginning of the end came when Linda Morrison made a crucial mistake. Desperate to find the money for Margaret's latest demand, she took a cash advance on a credit card her husband didn't know about. But when the statement arrived, Richard Morrison discovered the transaction and confronted his wife. Linda broke down completely. Years of keeping secrets, months of being blackmailed, and the constant stress had taken their toll. She told Richard everything: the garden club confessions, the blackmail letters, the payments she'd been making. Richard Morrison was a methodical man who'd built his accounting firm by paying attention to details others missed. Instead of confronting Margaret immediately, he convinced Linda to continue making payments while he gathered evidence. He hired a private investigator to research Margaret's background and installed hidden cameras to document any future blackmail attempts. What they discovered was shocking. Margaret Thompson didn't exist. The woman living on Maple Street was actually Patricia Kellerman, a convicted con artist who'd run similar schemes in 3 other states. She'd been perfecting the garden club blackmail operation for years, targeting affluent suburban neighborhoods where wives had money to steal and secrets to hide. The private investigator found records of Patricia's previous victims: a book club in Oregon, a yoga group in Arizona, a charity organization in Nevada. In each case, she'd infiltrated a group of women, gained their trust, collected their secrets, and systematically blackmailed them before disappearing with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Richard shared his findings with David Wilson and Mark Clark. The 3 husbands worked together to contact the FBI and local police, building a comprehensive case against Patricia. They also reached out to her previous victims, many of whom were willing to testify about similar experiences. The arrest happened during what Patricia thought would be a routine cash pickup. FBI agents were waiting at the cemetery when she arrived to collect Linda's latest payment. Hidden cameras captured her retrieving the money and counting it, providing clear evidence of the extortion. When agents searched her house, they found recording equipment, detailed files on dozens of potential victims, and nearly $200,000 in cash hidden throughout the property. They also discovered evidence of her other identities and a detailed manual she'd written about how to run garden club blackmail operations.
Patricia had even been scouting her next target, a tennis club in upscale Greenwich where wealthy wives gathered for weekly matches and gossip sessions. During the trial, more details emerged about Patricia's methods. She'd studied psychology and social manipulation, learning exactly how to make women feel safe enough to share their deepest secrets. She targeted neighborhoods where wives had access to significant money, but felt emotionally neglected or unfulfilled in their marriages. The prosecution revealed that Patricia had stolen over $800,000 from victims across 4 states. She'd ruined marriages, destroyed friendships, and caused several women to suffer nervous breakdowns from the stress of being blackmailed. In her final statement before sentencing, Patricia showed no remorse. "These women wanted to confess," she said coldly. "I just gave them someone to confess to. If their marriages were strong, they wouldn't have had secrets to hide in the first place." Patricia received 15 years in federal prison for extortion, fraud, and interstate criminal activity. The judge specifically noted the psychological damage she'd inflicted on her victims, many of whom required therapy to recover from the betrayal and manipulation. The women of Maple Street slowly rebuilt their relationships with their husbands. Sarah and David entered couples counseling and worked to reconnect their marriage. Jennifer confessed her emotional affair to Mark, and they sought professional help to address their marital problems. Linda and Richard renewed their vows after working through the trust issues that had led to her original affair. The house at the end of Maple Street remained empty for months before a young family with small children moved in. The neighborhood women were polite but cautious, having learned a painful lesson about trusting charming strangers who seemed too good to be true. Sarah Wilson still tends her rose garden, but she's never again joined an organized club or shared personal secrets with someone she barely knows. The beautiful garden that Margaret had claimed to love so much became overgrown and wild, a reminder of how something that appears nurturing on the surface can hide dangerous roots beneath. Sometimes, when the women pass each other on their morning walks, they exchange knowing looks but rarely speak about what happened. They learned that the most dangerous predators often wear the most convincing smiles, and that true friendship takes time to build, something Patricia Kellerman had counted on them forgetting. The garden club never reformed. The women discovered they preferred tending their own gardens, in their own way, without someone else watching and taking notes on every secret they thought they were safe to share.